Okay.
Okay. So, are we guys ready? Yeah, so may I just remind you to occupy the seats in front. It will be a lot better. The view is better in front. Okay. Alright, so we have Miss Mitos Suson. As I mentioned earlier, she wrote all these three books, all memoirs. Miss Mitos, right?
Non-fiction.
Non-fiction. Okay. So maybe before we go into quarantine wisdom and other absurdities, could we talk about Shards of Time and Adorable, a Dictator, and a Dad? Because I remember when we met in that cafe,
Yeah.
the first time we met, you mentioned to me a very interesting fact about your process in writing these two books.
Yeah.
So the first one that you published is Adorable, a Dictator, and a Dad. So you mentioned it's written by another person. It's about your life.
We did it together, but it was edited, and sometimes the editor, she did her best to represent my voice, but she's never been to the Philippines, so she didn't really know anything about the Philippines until she met me. So I felt like I had to, thanks to her, to rewrite it again, but in my own voice. But I know she meant well and did her best, and a lot of people actually complimented her book that it was, because she said there's a certain kind of English that it's still, even if I'm writing in English, but there's a certain kind of English that's acceptable literally, and she did a very good job with that, but I felt I had to, and then with that, there's the process with the Adorable. I was so scared, I was so guarded because I did drop names because they're the actually sell. Like I have a friend who's like a mentor, and he really told me like I had it was a writing group and it was my assignment, and I brought it, and then he didn't let me go. He said, you have a story there. We need to write it. Unfortunately, this friend died because I wrote this 10 years later, but he was already pitching it like to Sony, and he had also a story in himself. He was involved in the Zodiac killer in the U.S. But and then he was called by Sony, and he was already like so excited about my story that he was pitching it to Sony and even interviewing my dad. So he was very excited about it. But he said you have to drop the names, and I was so scared to drop the names because they are the ones that sell, but I still don't really promote it, but unfortunately, after the election, I had a sale, like it wiped me out, like from all over the world, everybody was buying the doorbell, and I'm trying to try to promote this, not the doorbell, but I think people were scared that the history would be rewritten and we would lose this book. So they would buy The Conjugal Dictatorship, and then they would buy my book. So I was writing on the crest of, but I was scared like, oh my God, the author of Conjugal Dictatorship, he was murdered. And so his son, so all my family called me like, are you sure you want to be there? You better come home.
Yeah, so that was like also one of the things that I was scared about when I started this cafe in Mactan. And I was thinking, okay, we'll have your book there. Should I really promote this book? Because what if someone burns my bookstore, my cafe? So I was like, I had that thought. But anyway, we launched the Shards of Time in the cafe. But sorry, going back to the first book, can we talk a little bit more of the Amazon marketing that you did? Because you also mentioned earlier, the reason why you used this title was because you want to make use of like the alphabetical marketing.
That's right. Yeah. They say that when you read a book, when you choose your title, either it's A or Z. Because if it's in the library, it's indexed, then they always take the first book or the last and then barely go through the middle. So that was one trick. And then also keywords, luckily I'm a web designer and I have a skill in search engine optimization. So I think that was also like divine intervention. But so I knew about keywords that, you put the keyword in the title and then the subtitle, so it worked. And so it ranked, it actually ranked #1 in Amazon, but in Philippine history, and I was also really shocked when it happened. But the sales really went through the roof after the election. And I didn't do anything. Normally I know how to do the keywords and how to change the categories, I know how to tweak things, because I was pretty good with, even with websites alone. I made websites, like impossible websites, to the top 10. And I myself, I think I have that gift because I'm surprised when I make it. I don't promise them, but I'm surprised when we make it to the #1. And the same thing with my book. I know to tweak a little bit, but I'm always surprised myself, am I sure I'm #1? It's really a surprise. But again, after the election, it just my sales went through the roof. That I was shocked, but I was grateful, without doing anything.
Without doing anything. So I think it tells a lot about being an indie writer in the Philippines, because it means you have to do a lot of efforts on your own.
Yeah.
So I could see that you're a very versatile person. You can write, you know how to make use of SEO,
Yeah.
you know how to design website, you know how to tweak your Amazon keywords. Why do you think it's so important, as an indie writer? Because, okay, from the publisher's point of view, once a writer writes or publish the book, or once a writer writes the book, in the traditional sense, it will be the publisher who will take care of everything. But because this is we're talking about independent publishing, it's going to be like a 50-50 effort from both the author and the publisher. So, but from the writer's point of view, is it difficult to do? Are you happy with that kind of effort? Because as I mentioned, it's 50-50. Don't you just wish that, I'll just focus on writing?
I wish I had that luxury just to focus on live writing, but as an indie author, you really have to also focus on marketing, so you really have to put in the work. So I'm really trying to do my best, even with the quarantine wisdom, I'm building a backlog, because they say they really find you a credible writer once you have your third, your fourth, or your fifth book, before you really, even they say after you make your second or third book, before you really can see money coming in. So it's like a business. So, and then as an indie writer, they say if you're traditionally published, they will only really promote the people who are famous are already out there, if they think, if you're not known, so they're hesitant or have a small budget for you. So you still have to do your own marketing, and that's why I decided to go for the indie author, because since I have to do it anyway, and the social media aspect is very important, and my job as a social media, I help so many people, whether they're authors or even businesses with the social media. So it's just that I never take care of myself. Sometimes I have to hire my own people because I always forget me, because I take care of clients because I still have to live, and they pay me, so those are the things that you have to juggle with, and I'm fine with Amazon, but even just breaking through the Philippines, that's why I'm with you, because I know you're a mover and a shaker. So I'm hitching my wagon with you. But just to break in, because in abroad, the Filipinos, they're not very supportive, they're very competitive. And I feel like I get a lot of support from other authors from all over the world, they support me, and we network. It really takes a village, As an indie author, you don't have to be alone, but you just have to do the work.
Yes. So that's right. It reminds me of my early years as a writer. The reason why we started Eight Letters was because as a writer, it was difficult to sell my book. So I was thinking, oh, this is an impossible job for one person, even for two persons. So the only way to do it, or at least one way to do it, is to collaborate with other writers, with other publishers. Okay, so we talk about a novel, a dictator, and that. And why did you decide to rewrite the book into shards of time?
The Shards of Time, because I made it a creative nonfiction, so that's also something new I learned. But actually, this is very close to my story, really based on the truth. But I just covered the names this time, so I felt safer to write it, because the first book I was just too scared to write it. But this one, so I felt, and then I felt like I had more voice with it because I work with an editor that she's also Filipina, but she has so many books behind her. She's also from the US, but like me, we have very similar history. So it was different, that it was more personal, and she kind of knew where I was coming from because our history was very similar.
Okay, so now let's slowly switch to quarantine wisdoms and other absurdities. So, as you mentioned earlier, during the COVID, during the pandemic, it's still the pandemic, but why did you decide to publish these blog entries? I mean, they could just remain online, but why put it in a book?
Because I was sort of actually also like building a backlist, because they say that again, you won't be credible until you have more books behind you, then they'll see, okay, you're a real author. So that was just when I needed to put out one, and it was also like with the blogging, it honed my skill, and there was like an important element, like when we went through the super typhoon Ray, I needed to really write about it. So it was just part of my process in branding myself and building my career, making myself credible as an author, because in the quarantine wisdom, I already put my list of books too, because that's what I learned from other authors. So I'm checking out other authors, and I'm looking at like the bestsellers, what they do, and I'm kind of like putting it, even if it's just a short read, I'm sort of like, I was even surprised that it also made like the top 100. I didn't expect that, but again, it's probably my skill in tweaking things, when I do things technically, I don't expect results, but I'm always surprised because it's really like just luck, probably,
Yeah. So could we read a little bit of excerpt from maybe Shards of Time? Sorry, I'm backtracking. But I think Shards of Time also deserves time for people to hear. Even just a short excerpt.
Okay, this is about the part when my dad was arrested that night. A feeling of emptiness and dread lingered in the dining room and enveloped me. 24 hours had passed since Dad was taken, and everything seemed like a blur for me. I gasped for air while Candy and Paul had green looks marked on their faces. Mom withdrew into silence while dinner was served. Her blank stares offered no words or explanation for what had just happened. Difficult months and years ahead awaited her, a woman raising children on her own in a harsh and forbidding macho culture would raise eyebrows. Although Mom did not show she was overwhelmed by the situation, she was not most likely thankful that my two older brothers were already living abroad. I knew that something was very wrong and that life would never be the same for me. I did not understand how Tito Barry, who was Dad's friend, could do this to him. As a Catholic child, I thought of Judas' betrayal kiss to Jesus. I broke the silence. Mom, where are they taking Dad? Mom took a sip of water, oblivious to her surroundings. My question was left unanswered. Mom could only stare into the distance, shooting holes into space. We were mutually bewildered, but I persisted. When will he come home? She looked at me briefly and forced an empty smile. After dinner, I locked the door inside my bedroom, acknowledging that I had not only lost my dad, but I had also lost my mother. She gradually retreated into a private world of her own. Various newspapers were scattered on my bed, perusing the pages, the headlines of local and national papers there. Conspirators of the assassination of President Marcos arrested. To make matters worse, it was also broadcasted throughout all the local radio and television stations that were allowed to operate under the new society, which was just another name for martial law. Dad was one of the many politicians arrested in alleged conspiracy to assassinate President Marcos. The news of Dad's arrest punched me right through my gut, although I did not fully understand the depth of the accusation. At my young age, I did not even know what the word conspiracy meant. I could not fully grasp the meaning of martial law either.
Thank you, Ms. Mitos. So, I can only imagine how it was like having to endure all that while you're young. Okay, I asked this to other authors, but I think it's also good for people to know. How was your process? Do you think it's also important for you to share this story? Do you feel better now that you've published this book?
Yeah, it was actually more for my healing. I felt like I needed to purge the demons out of myself because it's something I buried, my family buried, we didn't even talk about it. So primarily, it was really for my healing. I felt like I needed to write this book, and then I can really write what I want to write. But this was like, take care of this person, take care of my baggage, clean myself up, do a purging, a cleansing, and then I can breathe, and then I can write more positive, happy things.
Yes, because you also mentioned earlier that you took up you have a bachelor's degree in history,
yes.
Is that right? So, why history in the first place? Does it have something to do with what happened to you, or you're just interested in history?
I was just interested in history. I actually went to De La Salle College in Manila and took up Asian Studies. And it was really very interesting for me, but I always, my family, they supported me, do business, accounting, commerce, but I could not just connect with the numbers. Then I finally said, I just want, whatever course you can give me, they offered like, okay, how about Asian Studies? And I was so amazed, with the Chinese history, Japanese history. I felt so connected. And then I was like 3 years in La Salle, and I went back to Cebu. And then they didn't have Asian history. I said, give me anything. They gave me world history size. I continued studying world history, but it wasn't talking about medieval history, Europe, and I could not relate compared to Asian and Japanese history. But I said, okay, one day, but when you're reading about castles and medieval times, and I say, one day I'll be there, so I ended up living in Germany for 17 years, and it was fascinating just looking at castles but it was interesting because, again, it's some synchronicity because I didn't even know, my family laughed at me like, what will you do with history? And how can you even earn a living? My father was, you're just going to be a teacher or work in the library, and it was weird when I went back to the Philippines for a while and I started, I didn't know what to do, and everybody said, okay, you speak German, I was hired immediately by the travel agencies here, and you could talk about, take tourists around. And then suddenly I was telling them the whole story of Cebu, it was like, oh my God, my history, I could really use it. And my father said, yeah, you're a history student, you can use that. And then one time we met the visitors, it was a very big event, and everybody was concerned about me because I had a tattoo. And they didn't want me to wear like sleeveless, like don't go meet, don't even go to the tourists because I'm taking care of VIP tourists, like. And then, but then everybody came to me and said, what's your tattoo? Then I started talking about, in the 1500s, we were the Islas de los Pintados, and I started talking about the history of Cebu. We didn't have anything, but our people were all naked, but they were tattooed from head to foot. So, in a way, I did get to use my history, and now I'm finding it really helpful, even if everybody said, like, you're a history student, what are you gonna do with it, So now I'm glad I took up history.
Yes, and also you wrote a book about history.
Yeah, it's really helpful.
Yes,
yeah.
and memoir is actually your personal history.
Yeah.
So, it's all give and take.
Yeah.
All give and take. So perhaps, how about we read an excerpt once again from Quarantine Wisdom?
Quarantine Wisdom? Let me get it.
You also mentioned that you're working on a book about sigbins.
Yeah.
Would that be the fourth book?
Yeah, I'm working with my husband and my daughter. They really fascinated by the sigbin, and we don't really know if it's real or fiction. But in the South, they really believe, they swear by God that there was a sigbin in our garden.
So it's not a memoir anymore, right? It's this book about sigbins. It's not a memoir anymore. It's fiction.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I want to read a page, an excerpt when we thought we were gonna die in the Typhoon Ray, because we live close to the water, and we really thought that our house was very strong, and we were gonna be fine, and everybody even wanted to come and stay, get shelter in the house, but in the end we were stuck up in the laundry room, the smallest room. And we thought we were gonna die because the roof was already blowing, and we thought that it will crumble, on us. And this is another reason why I wrote this Quarantine Wisdom. Okay, an hour later, we heard a terrible wrenching of metal and a huge crash in the room upstairs. Darwin went to check it out. He gingerly went up the wet stairs and said he could barely open the door to the rooms because of the force of the wind. Our roof just blew away, he yelled, coming down the stairs. The source of the screeching crackle was the metal trusses in our roof being bent, torn off, and then deposited on our front porch. The sound confirmed my fears because the loud noise could be heard over the din of the storm. I'd already suspected that the roof was gone. I felt the drizzle of the rain touch my skin. I wasn't sure if it was the rain or the sea spraying on us. It did taste of salt. A shrill sound of continuously whistled around us as we moved to hide in the 1 by 2 meter laundry room with our dogs. I was clutching my husband's hands. He was restless and had one foot inside the room and the other foot hanging outside in the living room. He periodically got up to check our surroundings and would then come back, but there wasn't much room for the 5 of us in that tiny room. I felt like we were cast in the epic disaster film called Twister, and wish in my heart that it was just a bad dream. Still hugging my puppies tightly, feeling their heartbeats in sync with mine, I blurted out to Darwin, I just hope that if we die tonight, someone will take good care of them. Tearing up as I held my brown and gold fur balls, my 3 little Yorkies to my chest. 13-year-old Zorro, my 10-year-old Blondie May May, and 7-year-old Juju, I was worried they'd soon be orphans. Are we safe? I thought. As I repeatedly scanned our bunker of choice, my eyes were studying every square inch of the walls. I looked up at the ceiling and expecting it to come crashing down anytime and bury us alive. The mocking winds puff and rage on, displaying the full extent of their ferocious hunger as they consumed the barangay. Darwin and I both tried to maintain a brave face for each other, but we were both whistling through the graveyard. Everything we need in this life is in this little room except for Tiffany, I said as we lay on the pile of our dirty laundry. My thoughts were abruptly on my daughter as far away in Munich. I struggled hard to contain my tears and regret. The moment was as cutting as a knife. Tiffany's face was so vivid in my mind. I thought, will I ever see you again? I whispered aloud. I'm so sorry, my darling. Believe me, I was not planning on dying today. Rambling out loud, I spoke every thought that came through my head. I should have finished my will. I had just contacted our lawyer and wrapped up all the details on paper. Then suddenly, like an out-of-body experience, my fears crashed in. A vision of funeral ceremonies flashed across my conscious mind. All my loved ones, friends, and family coming to bid their final farewells while my spirit hovered above watching. With nothing but our cell phones as flashlights, we checked the time. After 3-4 hours, the dawn cracked a little, and then a little more. We were so grateful and relieved to be alive. The puppies need to go out, I spoke. They can go anywhere in the house, Darwin said. It's all debris and metal outside the house. It's too dangerous out there. I don't trust it. They may hurt themselves.
Thank you, Miss Mitos, for that beautiful reading. Just reminded me of what happened yesterday. For the first time, I decided to take a motorcycle. Yeah, so because there were no taxis, and I was like, am I going to die? I should have paid my bill. I was like, I still have a son waiting for me at home. So for that 45 minutes, I was having that thought. But of course, no one can imagine what you guys went through during that big typhoon. I was not here. Yeah,
You're in Siberia.
I was in Siberia. But yes, so anyway, so Miss Mitos, let us invite the audience right now to get a copy of your book.
Yes, my books are there. I have a small, it's not just my copy, but I actually was fascinated by the smaller version of my book because it's pocket size and you can put it like, you can keep it in your bag or, so you can get it at the back of at 8 ladies at the desk.
Thank you, Miss Vito. So yeah, so these are the 3 books that by Miss Mitos. They're all available at the back. So feel free to get your copies. Okay. So thank you, Miss Mitos. And up next we'll have at 2 p.m.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Miss Mitos. So we'll enjoy.